Hi, let's get started. We're looking at single whip this week, so we did some stuff on the Tuesday practice about single whip. This is a continuation of that. Let's start with the bear and bringing awareness to turning in your hip joints. So we often make a shape like this to say engaging here, releasing there. I want to also suggest that there's a sense of this kind of action, where as one is closing, the other is opening, as if you're kind of rotating on a a couple of ball bearings, which you actually are. They're your hip joints, the top of your leg. But you want this feeling that as one hip joint is drawing you toward it and closing, the other one is opening and you're moving away from it. When you think about releasing the emptying one, don't just think in front. Think about the whole structure. You're three-dimensional. We tend to put our hands here because this is where we can feel that connection between the thigh and the pelvis. But your hip joint has three-dimensionality, so it's in the backside too. So you can also feel whether you're releasing or engaging and having it kind of lift you up. So let that be a guide also, that when you're letting go, it's not just in front that you're letting go, but you're also letting go in back. And so I'm hoping that this idea of turning will get you to feel what's going on in the back as well. You have to release not just the muscles that engage across the front, but also the muscles that engage across the back. So you really want to feel a complete release through the whole leg. So, when you get onto one side, really try to feel everything letting go on the other side. And then when you switch, you're engaging on one side, and right away you're trying to let everything go on the other side. So don't forget about the three-dimensionality of your body when you work on this motion. So just do this a little bit. Try to feel what you can let go of. And make sure you're connected through to the bottoms of your feet, because that will tell you if you're still engaged on the side that's supposed to be releasing. You'll feel it start rolling you to the inside of that foot. So let the foot relax to the ground as you turn. Then you can feel the bottom of your foot, feel your hip joint, use that to engage you and release toward the ground on the other side. So that there really is, even if you're not going to do classic separation of the weight, lift it 1 centimeter off the ground without anything else moving, you're not just using them both and kind of slopping around. Really try to release one side completely and then change and start releasing the other side as much as you can. Find what you might be holding on to. It might be in the back, across your butt cheeks. Let it go. You're always moving away from the emptying leg. You're not just imagining that you're letting it go. You actually have a feeling of moving away from it. Feeling of spreading away from it. So breathing, relaxing, feeling your feet on the ground, suspended from above. Make sure you leave room inside your torso. You don't want to get all crunched down, hanging. Feet just on the ground, rear crown of the head suspended. And breathing, relaxing, and changing from one side to the other. Watching the world go by from your belly button, seeing the sweep of your hips as they go across the room. So working on single whip, this skill with the hip joints is really critical. Let's go through single whip once, from push to single whip, just to become aware of how much your hip joints opening and closing are part of how this move works. So, sitting on top of your back leg, arms extend and turn. Closing and opening. Change. Closing and opening. And again, closing and opening. It's all alternation of opening and closing the hip joints. Let's do that much again. Really paying attention to how the dantian, hips, waist make this whole transition work. Hold it at the final posture a moment and relax. And let's do that one more time, and then we'll start taking it apart. Begin. Moving away from your hands. Your hands go down, your elbows come up. Turn. Foot comes with you as it needs to. Change. Now it's on your right leg that you're closing. That's what draws your arm in. Now the right hip is opening. That's what sends your arm back out. And now you're going to close the front hip joint to bring you around square to the final posture. You can check out your feet, see how you ended up. Check out your arms. Wrist in front of shoulder, left wrist in front of shoulder, elbow dangles. Right arm is extended, open across the chest. All 4 fingers touch the thumb. And rest your legs. So the first thing I want to take a look at is actually the right arm at the completion of the move. So let's see, do it this way, right here. When you come into this final position, what happens is the body moves away from the arm, and so that's what opens up the chest here. It's tempting to push the arm back because you've heard that this is very open and the hand points a little bit beyond the side to the rear a little. That's aspirational. That's where you want to go with it, but you don't get it there by just putting it somewhere. That's going to create a whole lot of tension. So do this with me from the beginning, from push. And I'm going to face you. Lee's going to face the direction that's the canonical direction. And begin. turn, shift and turn, send it out, and step. Now before you start to shift, look at where your wrist is pointing. Leave it out in space, and as you shift into it, let yourself expand away from it. And rest your legs. So when the arm comes out, it's going to go wherever your hips have taken it to. So I reel it in, however far I reel it in. If I only reel it in this far, now it's going to go that way when I send it back out. So it's easy to think, oh, well then what I do is push it back to get it back. But the fact is, even if it's facing the front corner, when I move into the posture, I can still move away from it, and now it will be out at my side. So you don't have to put it where you think it goes, you just have to let the body put it where it goes, and then address it appropriately, which is to kind of leave it out there and let the body move away from it. So I want you to feel both possibilities. Yeah, so it's as if you've just sent the arm out, the part of the move where you turn and send the arm out after it's come in. Send it out and go ahead and, notice all the different places that it can be, and then feeling this space here, let it be to the front corner a little bit. Step like for 70-30, and as you shift into it, just leave the hand there. Feel how this opening, it'll move a little bit, but this is what's making the difference. Now go right back to that same place and get into the final posture by pulling it back, and feel what that does. Feel that difference. So you can come into it by moving the arm, or you can come into it by moving the body. And that's true regardless of where it ends up. We'll talk about how it gets where it ends up in a minute. But I want you to see that you can get it in the final posture where it needs to be from wherever it's been sent by this action. So just, stand here and feel. You want to feel the same way that we move away from the emptying leg. You want to move away from your right arm. Leave the arm out there and move away from it versus moving the arm. Feel the difference between those two. It's pretty different. Let's do the form, that move again, really paying attention to that quality at the end. So I'll begin. Turn, closing the left, now closing the right, drawing your arm in, opening the right, sending it out. Notice where it is in space. Step and shift. It kind of comes with you at this point. Now, to finish the move, turn away from your arm. Rest your legs. So that feeling, it has an almost a tautness to it that is created when you turn away from it. But it should not be the discomfort that you would feel by pushing it to the back. So how do we get the arm where it's going? When I do it this way, this hip joint turning the body, and this one, of course, releasing, is what makes the arm come into its folded up position. So this is how you aim this wrist, is from the hip joint. Then when you turn to release, it's going to go exactly along the line of where the arm is. So I open up and it goes that way. As opposed to having my arm go that way. Here I'm making a big arc with my wrist. I want my wrist to make a straight, direct line. So wherever I've managed to draw it to, if I only turn this far, now my wrist is here. That's okay. If this is how far I turn, that's how far I turn. I don't want to do this to make my wrist point somewhere else. If I want to get my wrist to point a different direction, I have to do it from here. So, little by little, wherever your hips get you to, that's where they get you to. So if I just get this far, my wrist is now pointing that way, and when I open up, I let it go that way. I don't open it up that way. See how it changes its direction. Wherever it goes to, that's where you have to work from. So this is where we started here. Now I'm going to move away from it. There it is. It ends up by your side, even if it starts out pointing to the front corner. So this is the mechanism for getting the wrist to point where you want it to go. And then you have to let it unfold in that direction, wherever it's aiming. So let's look at that. And then there's one more piece I want to look at in that opening extension piece. Okay, begin. And turn. Shift and turn to the right. This is really critical that you turn to the right however much you can. Look at where your wrist is. Unwind. Open the right hip joint and let that go where it's headed. Now step. Begin to shift. As you shift, it kind of comes with you a little bit. Sometimes you have a dog under you. And then move away from the arm. Let's do that again. Begin. We'll just flow through it. Turning. Unwinding. Step. Notice where your wrist is. Move away from the arm. Great. Now the other piece is, since everything's got to be driven by hips, waist, dantian, the same is true for the empty foot. So when I unwind, this foot is also responsive to what's happening in the hips. I open this hip joint and it turns my foot, as opposed to turning my foot. We often say pivot on the ball, because your foot should pivot on the ball, not the heel. It doesn't mean make an active action to pivot on the ball. It's a passive turn because the whole structure is changing, and so the foot's going to come with it. So you want to be really careful about letting there be anything that drives from down here at the foot. That's not all movement comes from the dantian. Some of that movement just came out of my left foot. I want the left foot to follow, everything follows the movement from the dantian. So you want to find a way that it will be driven as a piece of what's happening here. One of the ways you can tell if you've actually released that leg, that's part of it. If you don't release it, then you'll be manipulating it, and then it's not empty anymore. You've put something into it to make that happen. So one of the clues is, how is the alignment of the foot with the leg? If you do it by driving from this foot, the alignment is going to be, a little wonky from my knee is here, my foot's all the way over there. So you don't want to have a disconnect that happens down there. That's an external marker that tells you whether you did something down at your foot or if your foot just followed the turning of the hips. Because if it just follows the turning of the hips, there's no reason for it to ever lose its connection through the whole leg, my knee, my foot, my knee, my foot. The whole piece of it never loses that relationship. So let's do it again a few times and look for that feeling. We'll go through both sets of feelings so that you notice the difference. But let's just do it as right as you can make it this time. Go. Now, before you unwind, let go. Let go of the left leg so that when you turn and open on the right, the left empty leg just comes with you. Draw it back in. Reel it in. And just do this again. And reel it in again. And this time I want you to make it happen down at your foot as you open. And feel that difference. Take a look at what it did down at your foot. Come back in. And now really letting go of the leg, turning and letting it just follow. So let's do the whole move now. I won't keep stopping you. And you'll do it with the released empty leg that just follows the movement of the hips. And go. And complete the move. As you shift, moving away from your right arm. Hold it in the final posture a moment. Relax. Relax your belly, relax your lower back, so that the depth of your root can be holding your arms up and not the muscles of your shoulders. Breathing, releasing, suspended from above still, so that the torso doesn't get all crunched. This is the posture of maximum extension, and that has a vertical quality too. So let yourself feel open inside vertically. And notice how easy it is to let yourself fall into your legs. Go ahead and crunch your upper body and feel how that takes away the space inside. And now expand so that you're held from above and there's actually room. Your hips are falling away from your head rather than your whole body just mashing downward. So that helps you get the extension in the horizontal planes to have some in the vertical. And rest your legs. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee now, and we'll do more of this great work.
More on single whip. So we've looked at a bunch of pieces. We've looked at how the hips work to actually drive you all of the way through this with the alternating opening and closing, the two hip joints being out of phase with each other. We looked on Tuesday night at the way you sit back, when you sit back from push, and the hands extend out while the elbows come up versus the hands just dropping down. We've looked at actually making the hook where all of the fingers come together and the hook hand is loose. We've looked at how do you draw the hook in. You've come across here and you use the hip to reel the hook in and to send it out. We've looked at how does the foot turn so that the turning there is not active but is following the waist, which keeps the hip, knee, and foot all in a line versus actively pushing the foot out, which tends to make them not be in a line. We've left out, and we've looked at how do you move away from the arm here so that it's the body moving away from the arm rather than the arm being pulled back. And what we haven't talked about yet is the left hand. And so I'm going to look at three things with this. The first of them is when you extend the hook, the left hand responds too. This doesn't just stay fixed relative to my body as I turn. Right, if I come back here, as I extend the hook, if I keep my left hand sort of welded to my body, it didn't change at all. What I want to have happen is that this turning sends the hand out too. Then, when I come across, the left hand, the whole arm rotates up. Maggie has talked about this being like thrusting. If I'm, let me get myself face the direction that where you can see it. The angle is up this way, and look how my upper arm changes too. The whole arm is moving rather than just rotating at the elbow like a windshield wiper on the front of your car. So I'm not just coming up and rotating at the elbow, the whole arm is moving. And then the last thing is how this hand turns over so that it opens out. So let's do push into single whip a couple times. And I want you to try to pay attention to all of these things, but in particular, pay attention to the way the left hand moves as it comes up and as it turns over. And then we'll talk about this some more. So, from push, go ahead, sitting back and turning, shift and turn, reels the hook in, turn to extend the hook. Notice your left hand expands. Step, shift, left hand comes up, turn the waist, left palm turns out. Again, push, and go ahead. Just flowing through it. Push to single whip. Twice more. with all the pieces. Sit back, palms drop, elbows come up. Turn the waist, closing the rear hip joint. Front leg comes with you, knee is hanging. Shift to the right, turn to the right, closing the right hip joint, letting the left knee hang. Watch, look where your hook is extended, pointing, and now as you extend the hook, make sure it goes right along that path. And your left foot, the foot and the knee are in a line. Sink to step, feel that ripple through the whole body. Shift, left hand comes up, more weight forward, turn the waist, rear foot on heel, left palm out. Once more, just flowing through it. Push, and go ahead. Try to do all these pieces on your own. Take a break. So let's look at some of those a little bit more. This thrusting. So when I've gotten myself around and I'm ready to come up, I want this whole arm to move in a diagonal upward direction towards my left. And it's coming out of my right foot. There's this, from the rear leg up through the body to the middle of the forearm, there's a motion that goes across there as opposed to a rotating motion. So do this with me. Start from wherever you are. I'm going to face towards the camera. Beth will face the direction that we normally do it, so you can follow her, but I want you to be able to see where my arm is going. So from push, and just go ahead, get yourself to the place where you've extended the hook, and you step. So we're going to keep coming back to this spot. Now feel from your rear foot towards the center of the forearm, and think about a line that goes from the rear foot towards the upper left corner, and move the arm along that line as you come forward. Come back into the back foot. Get that line, rear foot, middle of the forearm, upper left corner. Move the line along, the arm along that line. Come back. This time let's do the windshield wiper thing. As you come up, rotate the arm around the elbow. Do that again. Come back. Windshield wiper. Rotate the arm around the elbow. And now come back to the first. Feel the bottom of the foot. Feel the middle of the forearm. A line towards the upper left corner. As you come up, the whole arm moves along that line, including your upper arm. And take a break. So, the danger with this, we will sometimes tell people that it rotates this way because what we're trying to do is keep you from efforting, tightening your shoulder, engaging that for all of this. But when you do that, you can see, for one thing, this is weak. You couldn't really do anything with this besides white raindrops off of a windshield. Whereas this is strong. You've got your whole body behind it. You can actually move something. The other thing about the windshield wiper is that your upper arm is dead. You're just going back and forth here, and nothing's changing in the upper arm. Whereas when you get that thrusting from the rear foot through the middle of the forearm up towards the upper left corner, then the upper arm is involved as you do this. So let's do that again. I want you to really pay attention to that. We'll do it in context so that you have a chance to find it while you're doing the form. And go ahead. Okay, connect the rear foot to the middle of the forearm. Feel it come all the way up. Then turn your waist, rear foot on heel, palm turns out. Another time. Go ahead. Step, connect the rear foot to the forearm. Thrusting, whole arm moves, turn. One more time, just flow through it, I won't talk. Great. So hopefully that feels different. Now, single whip is different from most of the other moves in that when we're going into single whip, as you're shifting and doing this thrusting, of course your waist is turning. I'm not just translating horizontally without turning. My waist is turning as I'm doing this, but I leave that rear foot behind. So I'm not doing an even turn in like I might do going from, say, white crane into brush knee. I come through here and I turn all the way, all the time while I'm shifting, I'm turning, and everything finishes together. There isn't a last minute of turn. Single whip is different. So in single whip, as you come across here, you're shifting and turning, but I'm not going to be able to get my waist more than about just past the front corner because of my rear foot. So I get most of my weight forward, and then at the last minute, I finish turning. That brings the rear foot around. That turns the front hand over. That moves me away from the hook arm, expanding the chest. So there's this moment in single whip when you've come up here, you've done the thrust, and now everything comes forward and goes out. So you want to not start turning partially, and in particular, don't start turning your rear foot in, because there's a real tendency to turn the rear foot in, and then this is just nothing. I'm just turning my hand over. So let's do that a couple times so you feel that. You see our pattern here. We're picking this move apart in gory detail, and then we're looking at each of the little bits, and we're showing you what we want you to be working on, and we're also showing you some common errors. And what we want to do with that is get you more aware of what you're actually doing and how, by being a little bit unconscious and just having something happen, you miss the opportunity to really have the Tai Chi energy move you. This applies to every move in the form. We're just picking single whip apart because it is one of the quintessential Tai Chi moves. But what we want to do is show you how to approach your practice so that you can look at anything in the form, repulse monkey, fist under elbow, four corners, squatting down. You can look at anything in the form and you can give it the same kind of detailed focus. And that's what you need to do. You need to take your practice and really look for the places where a little bit of unconsciousness takes the juice out of it. The places where you use a little force, you do something extra because your awareness isn't right on this. And just continually, form after form, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, you're continually looking at everything that you're doing there, finding that next little bit of tension, force, unawareness, and relaxing it, not forcing it, shining the light of awareness on it, and just continuing to do that. So we're spending a couple hours on this deep dive of single whip, and that's not about single whip. That's about your Tai Chi practice. And so we're trying to help you find a way to productively work deeper on any move and then let that apply to the whole form. So we're going to work productively on this last bit of turning and turning the foot in. We're going to do it where you leave the foot behind and you get that last minute turn, and we're going to do it where you let the juice out by turning the foot in early so you just move the hands. So let's do it again from push. So sit back and turn, shift and turn, extend the hook, step. Okay, now shift without moving your rear foot. Make sure your waist is turning. You're trying to turn towards the front. As you get into the front leg, notice that you've turned as far as you can. And now, whoosh, turn everything, turn the front hand. Let's do it like that again. Sit back, turn, shift and turn. Turn to extend the hook. Step. As you're shifting, you're turning, the left arm is thrusting up, then whoosh, turn everything in. Okay, now let's do it and we'll let the air out, we'll let it deflate by turning our foot in early. So when we do it this time, you're going to extend and just turn your foot and then finish so that you feel what that feels like. Push, sit back, turn the waist, shift the weight and turn to the right. turn to extend the hook, step. Okay, now everything's the same. You're just shifting and turning. Rear foot turns in. Turn your front hand over. That should feel kind of deflated and arbitrary. You're just turning your hand over. Back to the first one, where you have this moment that then you send everything out. Go ahead, push. Just flow through it. Okay, coming up, rear foot to front hand. Rear foot has not turned. Front hand is in place. Last minute, turn the waist, rear foot on heel. Front palm turns out. So that should feel like something's actually happening with the front hand because of the waist, as opposed to everything's there and then you just kind of arbitrarily turn your front hand over. Now watch what happens with the front hand. As I come across here and I thrust up, my hand has arrived so that it's in front of where my shoulder is going to be. And as I turn, the hand stays in place. As opposed to coming up and see here, now the hand is in front of the center of my chest. It's not at all in front of my shoulder. And when I turn, the hand has to move a lot. Right? See, this is a kind of a waving across there, a fanning or something. The other one, it comes up, hand is in place, and now it turns in place and goes out. And you can see it's in line with where my shoulder is going to be. My elbow is outside my shoulder. As I turn, the elbow drops and the hand comes out. And so you can see what's happening here. The shoulder is open. As I turn, the shoulder is closing. With the other one, where I move the hand, now the hand's over here in front of my chest, and look, my elbow's in front of my shoulder, and as I turn, there's nothing really happening there. The shoulder joint didn't change. So I need this shoulder is open, as I turn, shoulder closes. And part of that, what that'll do, is that'll help you with this feeling of expansion. The thing that happens in single whip is people come up, and as they finish, they're deflating back in. I've gotten a nice big thing, and as I finish, everything is coming in. So I don't want that to happen. I want the finish. At the finish, I'm aware of going out even more than I was before there. As opposed to coming in and deflating, I get up, and when I finish, I've got rear foot to the front hand, and it's like a fire hose. Everything is headed out there. So watch for this hand turning over. Let's do that. Push, sitting back, turning, shift and turn, turn to extend the hook, step, shift, thrusting, stop at the end of the thrust. And look where your left hand is. Is it in front of your chest, your shoulder pointed towards the wall you're going to go to, or is it more towards the front corner? Where Beth is relative to me or where Valerie is. Get it so that it's already in space. And now as you turn, the hand turns, staying in space and goes out. Do that again. Push, sitting back and turning. Shift and turn. Extend the hook. Step. Thrust. Left hand is already where it's going to be in front of the shoulder. Last minute, turn the waist, rear foot on heel, palm turns out. Let's make the error and so that the hand moves, so you perceive that. Push, sit back, turn, shift and turn. Turn to extend the hook. Step. Windshield wiper, so the hand comes up. It'll be in front of your chest rather than your shoulder. And now when you turn, watch how the hand moves in space. Okay, back to thrusting and having the hand already where it's going to go. Once more. Go ahead. Step. Thrust. The left hand ends up where it's going to be. Turn. Left hand turns in place. Great. Take a break. So like I said a little bit ago, the reason to do a deep dive on this is so that you become aware of places where you're forcing, places where you're unaware, and so you do something unconsciously, places where you don't have the connection through the whole body. This connection from the rear foot up through the arm, that you want to have that. This isn't just the arm on its own, it's the whole body is moving this. So I'm going to do, for closing this, I want to do our made up little 5 single whips form, so that we can do 5 single whips. And the thing about this, if you did the spatial awareness class with us a week or two ago, we worked on this in one of those, is that we're going to face every direction. So this is going to mess with you because you're not going to have your standard checkpoints and external markers, but the nice thing is that it'll let us do single whip 5 times. And the trick to this, take single whip with me, the trick to this is getting from single whip to ward off right. And so the way you do it is you drop your hook hand, you let it come underneath the front hand, you turn towards your right front corner, you step at 90 degrees, and then you shift and turn. Now you're doing ward off right. So do that again with me. Take single whip. All the way forward, drop the hook hand, let it come underneath the left hand, turn to the right front corner, you've got a ball of air, left hand on top, right hand on the bottom, step for a ward off right, come up, ward off right. And so if you watch how this works, if I do the form the normal way, I'm in ward off left, I'm in ward off right facing this way, I'm going to end up in single whip facing towards the rear corner. And now I'm going to turn 90 degrees. So now my ward off right, the next one, is facing a different direction. I'm going to continue. See, my single whip is suddenly facing a new direction. I do another one, a new ward off right, facing a new direction. So we're going to end up rotating this around, facing a different direction every time as we go through this. So this will mess with you a little bit. I'm going to pause for a second before we do this while I deal with the delivery truck that's having some trouble in our driveway. Okay, disaster narrowly averted, and we're back with a new order of dog food. So we're going to run through this. I think we'll do it twice with the time that we've got left. So the first time I just want you to get the mechanics of facing all the different directions. And then the second time we'll be able to work on single whip. We'll do it 5 times. That means you'll end up with a single whip facing the way you're used to, and then we're just going to close. You'll sit back, turn your front foot, drop your hands, move your foot, cross hands, finish. So that will make more sense when we do it. So let's run through it once so you get the mechanics. Then we'll do it again. It'll give you an opportunity to pay attention to grasp sparrow's tail and single whip 5 times. So from the top. And just go ahead, just flowing. Okay, headed into single whip. Shift all your weight forward, drop the hook hand, turn to the right front corner, step for ward off right, voila, we've just turned. Continue again up to single whip. Single whip. All the way forward, hook hand drops, comes under the left hand. Turn to the right corner, step. Ward off right. Continue. Coming up to single whip again. Weight forward, drop the hook hand, turn to your right front corner, step, ward off right. Single whip again. Release the hook hand, turn to your right front corner, ball of air, step, ward off right, and we're back to our home direction. So we'll follow it up through to single whip. Okay, and now after this single whip, we're going to close. So just sit back, let your left arm lie down, turn your waist, pivoting the left foot, shift your weight, pivoting the right foot, step, shift, cross hands, standing up, and finishing. So I'm picking this little 5 single whips form for 2 reasons. One of them is to mess with you, so that you experience putting the form in an unfamiliar circumstance. You're not just locked into your standard markers. I don't just always know that I face the mirror here when I do single whip. I don't just know that I face the stuff at the front of the room here when I'm doing ward off left. So that you actually are forced to deal with your space in an unfamiliar way. And the other reason I'm doing it is because we get 5 single whips in a short amount of time. And there's 5 single whips in the form as a whole, but we don't have enough time to do 2 forms. So this way we get to do 5 single whips in close succession with each other. So let's run through push to single whip one more time. And I want to use that to remind you of all the stuff we've talked about on Tuesday and here again on Thursday morning. And so that's fresh in your mind, so that when we do the 5 single whip form, you've got a shot at remembering those. Now, you're not going to remember all the details each time, but each time that you do it, try to pay attention to more. Try to get more of the precision, more of what we're working on. That's how you make change. That's how you teach yourself something new. So, starting from push. As you sit back, that fingertips stay in place. The arms extend, the elbows come up. Turn. You start turning, closing the rear hip joint, and then you release the front foot and it comes with you. Make sure the right knee is hanging, no weight in it. Shift to the right, and now turn to the right. As you do that, close the right hip joint, left opens, make sure the left knee is hanging. Look where your hook is. It should be 1 fist width in front of your right shoulder. The hook hand is directly over the left palm. This is catching the drips from the tea bag. Look at where your right forearm is pointed. That's the direction that the hook is going to go when you unreel it. So now turn, that extends the hook. Feel that your left arm is alive as you do that. Step, as you step, the left hand expands a little bit more. Connect from your rear foot to the middle of the left forearm. Think about that thrusting angle up towards the upper left corner. And thrust. Make sure the left hand is where it's supposed to be, in front of your left shoulder. You haven't turned the rear foot in. Your right shoulder hasn't opened all the way yet. Now do everything at once. Turn the waist, rear foot on heel, front hand turns over, right shoulder opens. Once more, all those pieces. Sit back, fingertips stay in place, elbows rise, arms extend. Turn the waist, rear hip joint closes, front opens. Then the front foot comes with you. Make sure the knee is really hanging. Shift to the right, turn to the right, letting the left knee hang. Drawing the hook in so that the hook is 1 fist width in front of your right shoulder. The tea drips from the tea bag you've got in your right hand are caught by the saucer of your left hand. Look where your right forearm is pointing. That's the direction the hook is going to go. Send the hook out with the hip, making sure that the left foot turns only because of the waist turning. Step, let the bottom hand respond as you do this. Shift, thrusting and turning. Check that the left hand is in front of your left shoulder, not in front of your chest. So my hand is towards the wall, not Beth. And now everything happens at once. Turn the waist, rear foot on heel, rear shoulder opens, front shoulder closes, front hand turns out. So that might be everything that we've talked about over the last 2 hours. So let's do the 5 single whips form. And I'm not going to talk through it. So this is your chance to remember what you can, change what you're doing habitually, bit by bit, and enjoy it. So, from the top, 5 single whips form. And go ahead. Now as we go from push into single whip, try to remember all these pieces and do them. Drop the hook hand, turn to the right front corner, ward off right. And continue. one more chance. Sit back, let the left forearm lay down, turn the waist, left foot pivots on heel, shift, dropping the hands, right foot pivots on ball, step, 50-50, cross hands, finishing. Letting go of any tension, whole body relaxed. Rear crown of head connected to heaven, feet open to the ground, bubbling wells connected to earth, mind resting in the Dantian. Three breaths. And close. Great. Always a pleasure, and we'll see you all again real soon.